Have you ever thought about what actually makes something or someone famous? Is it just about raw talent? Or is there something else going on? Today we're going to be looking at this book by Harvard Law professor Cass Sunstein. It's called How to Be Famous. And yeah, it's a pretty interesting look at all the sort of different things that might contribute to fame.
Yeah.
So think about the movie Yesterday,
Okay.
the one where that musician wakes up and the Beatles just never happened, and he
Yeah.
starts playing their songs, and bam, he's like a huge star.
Right, right.
There's even that deleted scene, have you seen that one, where he plays something for Anna de Armas?
Oh, I don't think so.
Yeah, it's like after James Corden gives him a little nudge.
Okay.
And you watch that, and you're just like, well, yeah, it's the Beatles. Anyone who played their music would be a massive success. But is it really that simple?
Yeah, the movie sort of taps into this common belief that, if your work is really great, it's bound to be discovered. But if we take a closer look, I think history tells a different story. There are tons of examples of what you might call, unsung geniuses, people whose, brilliance is only recognized after they're gone.
Oh, interesting. So hidden treasures that people only find after the map's been lost?
Exactly. And Sunstein actually highlights a couple of really interesting examples in his book, Robert Johnson and Connie Converse.
Okay.
Johnson was this blues musician who died really young back in 1938. And his music went largely unnoticed until this compilation album was released in 1961.
Wow, so that's 23 years after his death.
Yeah.
Was he totally unknown when he was alive, or was there a sense that he was something special?
I mean, his talent wasn't completely unnoticed. Even legends like Eric Clapton and Bob Dylan considered him a major influence. Dylan even described Johnson's guitar playing as so sharp it could cut your breath in two.
Whoa.
Pretty intense, right?
Yeah, that's really high praise. So what kept him from achieving wider recognition when he was alive then?
Yeah, well, that's the mystery, isn't it? And it gets even more interesting when you consider all the scarce details and the rumors that surround his life and his death. It just adds to this mystique.
Right.
And then there's Connie Converse. She was a singer-songwriter who just vanished in 1974. And decades later, these recordings that she made at home were found and started to be shared online. And today, her music has millions of listens on Spotify.
I actually listened to that album, How Sad, How Lovely, after reading about her in the book. And it's beautiful, really unique, this haunting quality to it that really stays with you. It's crazy to think that someone with such a distinct voice and style wasn't more popular when she was alive.
Yeah, you hit on a really crucial point there, the stories of both Johnson and Converse. They challenge this idea that quality guarantees success. And it begs the question, what other forces are shaping these outcomes? What else is going on?
Okay, I'm hooked. What did Sunstein find? Did he uncover some sort of secret formula to fame?
Well, not exactly a formula, but he points to some really interesting research that highlights this often overlooked role of social influence. There was this study from 2004, it's posted in Science magazine, and it looked at how our perception of what's popular shapes our own preferences.
A Science magazine study, huh? That sounds pretty legit.
It's a pretty clever study, actually. The researchers, they made this website, and it featured 48 songs from bands that no one had ever heard of. And they split the people participating into two groups. So one group could only see the song title and the band name. But the other group saw the same info, but they also saw how many times each song had been downloaded.
So one group went in blind, the other had a little social nudge to guide their choices. What happened?
Okay, so the results were pretty fascinating. The group that was exposed to those download counts, they showed this really strong winner-take-all dynamic. So basically just a few songs became super popular, even though the initial choice of featured songs was totally random.
Wait, so you're saying that just seeing a higher download count made people more likely to choose that song, even if it wasn't objectively better than the others?
That's exactly what the study suggests. And to measure this, they used something called the G-Nani coefficient. It's a way to measure inequality. What they found was that in the groups with the higher social influence, so the ones who could see the download count, they ended up with higher Gini coefficients. And what that means is that a few songs got a ton of downloads and the others were ignored.
Oh, okay. So those early impressions and that sense of what's popular had a huge impact, regardless of the actual quality of the music. Which feels a little unfair. What if this amazing song gets buried because it didn't get those early listens?
Yeah, it definitely raises some questions about how we judge and see success, right? It's when you're shopping online and you see a product with hundreds of 5-star reviews, you're probably going to trust the crowd, even if you had doubts before.
Yeah, I've definitely been influenced by those reviews before. But how does this explain the Robert Johnson and Connie Converse thing? Like, they didn't have download counts back then.
Right. But the underlying principle still applies. What we're talking about here is this phenomenon known as the information cascade.
Information cascade. Sounds intense, like a waterfall of opinions.
It's not as complicated as it sounds. Think of it like this. Imagine you're in a book club and you're trying to choose what to read next. And someone suggests a biography of the Beatles.
Okay.
Now, if you're a huge Beatles fan, you're probably already on board. But let's say you're not that familiar with them. You might still agree because your friend suggested it, or maybe you just assume they have good taste. Then someone else chimes in and says they also want to read the Beatles book. Now, even if you'd heard from someone else that the book wasn't that good, you might not want to say anything because everyone else is so excited about it.
Ah, I see. You start to doubt yourself because it seems like everyone else is in agreement.
Right. And that's what an information cascade is.
Hmm.
Like those early choices, they create a ripple effect, they influence later decisions, and then you get this snowball effect, where what seems popular just overrides individual judgment.
Got it.
Remember how in that music study they flipped the download counts? Even though they artificially inflated the popularity of certain songs, those songs stayed popular.
So it's almost like those early boosts, they created this self-fulfilling prophecy.
Exactly. And it just highlights how powerful those first impressions can be in shaping our opinions and choices.
That's fascinating. So are you saying that something can just become super popular because it got a lucky early boost,
Yeah.
even if it isn't like the best?
It's definitely a factor. And
Yeah.
speaking of lucky breaks, this brings us back to the Beatles. While no one can deny their incredible talent, their path to fame was also shaped by the series of fortunate events. That actually set off a really powerful information cascade.
Okay, I gotta hear this. How did these lucky breaks help the Beatles become, well, the Beatles?
Well, it all started with their manager, Brian Epstein. He was totally blown away by their music after seeing them perform at the Cavern Club in Liverpool. But not everyone shared his enthusiasm. Like their early performances, they were pretty raw, their clothes were kind of rough around the edges. They even swore on stage. Not exactly the polished pop stars we know today. So Epstein had to really fight to convince record labels to take a chance on them.
It's so funny to picture the Beatles as anything less than perfect. I guess everyone starts somewhere. So how did they finally catch their big break?
Well, after a lot of persistence, Epstein managed to convince George Martin to give him a shot. He was a producer at EMI. Their first single, Love Me Do, was released without a lot of fanfare. The record label wasn't too sure about it. Even radio DJs were kind of hesitant to play it. Yeah, it wasn't looking too good for them at first. But here's where things get interesting. Epstein, he was determined to get the song noticed, and he was a master at promotion. You know, he even bought thousands of copies of Love Me Do himself just to boost it on the charts.
Wow, talk about dedication. He must really believed in them.
Oh, he absolutely did.
Yeah.
And then there was their performance of Please Please Me. It was on this popular TV show on a Saturday night.
Hmm.
And as luck would have it, there was this huge snowstorm that kept everyone stuck at home watching TV. The performance was a smash. And just 2 months later, the song was at the top of the charts.
So a snowstorm helped launch their career. That's wild.
It really shows you how, timing and a little bit of luck can play a huge role. And from there, their success just snowballed. But those early boosts, Epstein's promotion, that perfectly timed snowstorm,
Yeah.
they all helped to set off that information cascade that we were talking about. And that's what propelled them to superstardom.
So you're saying that even the Beatles, with all their talent, they needed a little bit of luck to become, well, the Beatles.
It makes you think, right? It's hard to imagine how things might have turned out without those early lucky breaks.
Okay, so we know that luck plays a bigger role in fame than we might like to think. But before we all just resign ourselves to obscurity, is there anything we can do to improve our chances? Or is it all just a cosmic lottery?
That's where understanding these ideas becomes really empowering. We can't control every twist and turn of fate, but we can definitely be more proactive. We can stack the deck in our favor.
Okay, I'm listening. Give us the goods. What can we actually do to increase our chances of getting noticed?
Well, first and foremost, never underestimate quality.
Mm-hmm.
Sunstein really emphasizes that. Quality alone might not guarantee fame, but it's like the essential foundation. You can have the luckiest break in the world, but if your product or idea isn't good, your success won't last.
Yeah, that makes sense. You might be able to grab people's attention, but you can't force them to like something that's not good.
Exactly. So whether you're an artist or an entrepreneur or writer, whatever, focus on honing your craft and always try to improve. Just keep refining your product, whatever that may be.
Okay, step one, be awesome. Got it. What else?
Step 2, be strategic about creating your own information cascades. Like, think back to Brian Epstein and how he promoted the Beatles even when no one else believed in them. We can learn from that.
So we need to become our own hype machines.
Yeah, kind of. Think about how you can create buzz around your work. Like, use social media, work with influencers in your field, even come up with some creative PR strategies. The key is to get people talking and sharing. Get them to engage with your work. The more you can generate that early momentum, the more likely you are to trigger that self-perpetuating cycle of attention and popularity.
Okay, I like that. Create a buzz, ride the wave. But what about those network effects that you mentioned? How do we tap into those?
Building a community around your work is crucial for that. The more people who feel connected to what you do, the more valuable it becomes. Like, remember, something becomes more valuable as more people use it or engage with it.
So it's not just about attracting a passive audience. It's about cultivating a group of dedicated fans who will champion your work.
Exactly. Invest in those relationships. Create opportunities for your followers to interact. Make them feel like they're a part of something special. Like, start a Facebook group, host online events, or just genuinely engage with people on social media.
That reminds me of what you said about group polarization. Is that something we can do on purpose?
It can work to your advantage, for sure. When people who share interests come together, their excitement and commitment just multiplies. Like, think about how passionate sports fans are, or how devoted some fandoms can be. When you make spaces for your audience to connect and share their love for your work, you can tap into that energy.
So create a space where our fans can geek out together. Love it. But let's be real. Even with the best plans, there's still a ton of luck involved. How do we stay motivated when it feels like we're fighting an uphill battle?
That's where persistence comes in. Like, the road to success is almost never a straight line. There will be setbacks and rejections, times when you want to quit. But if you really believe in what you're doing, don't let those things stop you.
Easier said than done sometimes, right? It can feel like you're shouting into the void.
It totally can. But remember, every piece of content you create, every connection you make, every ounce of effort you put in, it all increases your chances of getting that lucky break that changes everything. You never know when that viral tweet will happen or when you'll have that chance encounter, that unexpected opportunity.
So it's kind of a numbers game. The more we put ourselves out there, the luckier we get.
Yeah, in a way. And even if you don't become super famous overnight, building a loyal following and making quality work can lead to a fulfilling and sustainable career.
That's a good way to look at it. It takes the pressure off needing to be like the next Beyoncé. And it helps you focus on creating something meaningful that people will connect with.
That's the idea. And sometimes that slower, more organic growth can be even more rewarding. It allows you to build real connections and develop a sense of purpose that goes beyond chasing fame.
We've covered a lot today, from the crazy influence of download counts to the power of information cascades. It's clear that fame is a complex thing, but I'm curious, what stood out to you the most from our deep dive into Sunstein's book?
You know, for me, what's really interesting is how Sunstein challenges that idea of the lone genius. He wants us to see that even the most talented people are a product of their environment. They benefit from things they can't always control.
It's a good reminder to stay humble and be grateful for the role of luck and chance. And maybe it also helps us to appreciate the success of others without comparing ourselves or thinking, if only I had their luck.
Right. It's about shifting our focus from just the end result to appreciating the journey, finding joy in creating, in striving for excellence, and in building connections along the way.
I love that. Focusing on the journey, not just the destination. It's a great reminder that even if we don't become super famous, we can still find a lot of fulfillment and create something meaningful. So as we wrap up our deep dive into fame and fortune, what's the one big thing you want our listeners to take away from today's episode?
If I had to sum it up in one sentence, I'd say, while fame might seem mysterious and hard to grasp, understanding how it works can help us make better choices, increase our chances of standing out, and ultimately be more fulfilled in our creative endeavors.
Well said. So, to everyone listening, as you go out and follow your passions, remember, keep improving your craft, create some buzz, build a supportive community around your work, and most importantly, never give up. You never know what amazing opportunities might be just around the corner. And one last thought to consider. If luck really does play such a big part in our lives, how does that change how we view success, both in ourselves and in others? It's something to think about as you navigate your own unique path. That's all for our deep dive into the fascinating world of fame. Until next time, stay curious, keep creating, and don't be afraid to embrace those unexpected turns along the way.